Welcome back to rSteven. If I see another "would you like to accept our website's cookies" pop-ups, I'm going to scream. And today, from a great neighbor trash can feud to an ex-employee leaving their former workplace unable to open its own files, we've got some great revenge stories, all starting with a post titled, "Told boss I didn't have enough time to do everything. She just laughed." I worked at a newspaper company from the time I was 19 to about 21. Started out as a receptionist and later got placed into a data entry position for the billing of advertisement slots. I was a fast and reliable typist, so it made sense. Not a glamorous job, but I enjoyed it. I was pretty much the only data entry person for a significant time period. My coworkers at the main office would enter their own sales into the system, but I'd enter those from our other offices. During this period, the owners of the company were buying up more small-town newspapers. I believe at the time we were up to about 16. There were over 20 when I left, and they were still buying more. Well, one of the things I did before I moved into data entry was doing legal documents. This mostly consisted of changing dates, newspaper name, and supervisor's name. Then I would paste on a cutout of the notice that they require a legal document for and place them on my boss's desk for her to get signed and notarized. I stopped doing legal documents after I trained the new receptionist, who was frankly not that great at her job. I don't remember why exactly, but my boss asked me if I could do a few legal documents one week. At this point in time, we had just bought 4 new newspapers, and I was way too busy trying to keep up with deadlines to do those legal documents. So I told her I didn't have the time to do them, and she just laughed at me and told me I'd figure it out. Keeping in mind that I'm 20, the youngest person in the office by at least a decade, overworked from being the sole person in charge of multiple newspaper advertisements, and a frequent scapegoat for any mistakes made in the data, which, like 9 times out of 10, the mistakes were made by my boss. You can literally see this by checking who last opened and submitted an ad. They just never bothered verifying beforehand who made the mistake. I pointed this out countless times, and they would just sheepishly walk away. Which all led me to decide to be a bit petty. So I went to my office and entered the data. Every newspaper had a different deadline which I'd have to meet so they could compare the preprints to the data for the following week. But those legals weren't due until Friday. So for 3 days, I struggled to keep up with the sheer bulk of all the data I had to enter and barely even glanced at those legal documents. Friday was a slower day in the afternoon, but the notary typically left around noon. By the time I got the legals done, she was gone. My boss, who had forgotten about the legals, blew up, demanding why I didn't do them earlier and that they had to go out today. I, who still had a giant stack of data I had to enter by Monday at noon, simply looked her in the eye and said, "I told you I didn't have the time to do them." Apparently, I glared so hard that she immediately backed down, which honestly I was, and still am, super proud about. She ended up having to drive to the notary's house and get her to sign them and drive back to the office and fax them. The notary did not live in town. So, I've been playing way too much Pokemon lately when OP tells the story and they talk about their piercing glare completely disarming their boss. And my mind goes to, oh, OP must have Intimidate or something. I don't know if I applied what OP did, it would work out for me all too well. Apparently, I've been told that my face is more of like a resting depression face, which is always great to hear, by the way. I remember there was this one time in high school, I was just sitting in gym by myself, and some girl walks up and says, "You look so sad, can I give you a hug?" Which, to be fair, if it happened more, maybe I would appreciate my resting depression face. But in the moment, I was more focused on how misinterpreted the whole situation was, and my general discomfort of being observed. In the comments on this post, a user named NeverDropsIn57 wrote, "Did you know how imposing your glare is before this? Or was it like discovering a new secret power?" The OP replied, "I've definitely used it in future situations. I've been told I look scary when I do it. And speaking of scary, I think I'm contractually obligated to say something like, if you don't hit those like and subscribe buttons down below now, something scary will happen to you. So you better press them." Our next story is, my neighbor told me I couldn't put out my trash, so I put his on vacation hold. So I rent a house with my husband and 2 of our friends. It's a 5-bedroom house. Rent is outrageous in our area, $2,400 for a 1-bedroom apartment. So we found this house for $3,000. Not a bad deal while we save up to buy a house. There are other houses in the neighborhood like this as well. Our next door neighbors, their house is a 5-bedroom house, and they have 9 people living in their house. So it is chaos over there all the time. In our neighborhood, we can choose the trash company, so it just so happens that we have the same trash company as the next door neighbors. Our trash company does like us to have the trash out by 7 a.m. We don't always get it out that early though, and that's where this problem started. Most of the time, they don't pick up our trash until 11 a.m. So obviously, as long as the trash is out before trash pickup gets here, they can take our trash. The people next door have 3 trash cans and they are overflowing every single week. They put their trash out the night before, but unfortunately, our neighborhood has raccoons and foxes. So the trash is always getting into, and last time a raccoon got into their trash, it left a mess in our yard and they wouldn't pick it up. I was pretty ticked about it, but I just let it go and cleaned up their trash. I did go and put it back into their trash can, and they just sat out front glaring at me while I did that. Here is where the incident started. A couple of weeks ago, I didn't get our trash out until almost 9 a.m. All 4 of us were sick with COVID. I was on the mend and feeling a little bit better, but I slept in and forgot to put out the trash at 7 a.m. So I go to put the trash out, and my neighbor starts yelling at me, saying, "You were supposed to have your trash out by 7 a.m. You can't put your trash out now." I said, "Well, they haven't come and picked up the trash because your trash cans are full, so it's not a big deal." He said, "No, that's the rules. Your trash has to be out by 7 a.m. If it's not, you can't get your trash picked up this week." I said, "I understand that they want the trash out by 7 a.m., but they haven't come and picked it up yet, so it doesn't matter." So I went ahead and I just walked inside. I went back to bed, and a couple hours later, I get up to see that our trash cans were put to the side of the house and they were still full of trash. So that means that someone moved our trash can. Our other neighbor came up to me the next day and said that she saw him put our trash can back. She didn't know the situation, so she wasn't going to butt in and tell him not to do that. Our neighbors are also very proud about their last name. They literally have a flag in their front window with their last name. So I called the trash company and I said that I was Mr. So-and-so and I needed to set up a vacation hold for our upcoming pickup. They said, "No problem, we won't pick up your trash next week." They legit only asked for the address, no other information. The next week, I made sure that our trash was out at 6:45 a.m. Then I sat and watched for the trash truck, and I watched them come past the house. They drove past my neighbor's house, didn't pick up their trash, even though their trash was overflowing, picked up ours and the other few people who also have them, and left. I know I'm a jerk for doing this. You don't need to tell me. I may have crossed the line, but he also crossed the line by touching our cans and moving them and setting foot on our property. Editing to add, our lease is up at the end of this month, so we won't be dealing with these crazies for much longer, and if they mess with the house, good, my slumlord can deal with it. So let this be a lesson to all you people out there. Don't ever lay your hands on another person's cans. You can't just go grabbing someone else's cans just because they didn't have them out when you wanted them out. In all seriousness though, this actually really annoys me because I have a very similar situation where I live. In my area, they say that they want the trash out by 6 a.m., but there are a lot of critters that will get into the trash if I put it out there the night before. Every trash day, about 7 a.m., 7:30, I get up, go out there and put out the trash. They never come and pick it up any earlier than like 9 a.m. at the earliest. I'll admit though, sometimes I do feel like an oddball because I'll be the only one doing that, taking it out in the morning. All the other neighbors just chance it every time and put it out the night before. I can't tell you how many times I've seen the neighbors have to scoop up their trash because the bags are ripped and strewn all about. In the comments on the post, a user named Burnt00Toast wrote, "Are you kidding me? I would have dumped my full bins all over their yard as soon as I realized they had moved the trash before pickup. Another user named Code Operator wrote, I had a neighbor who was a general contractor. He used to bring home truckloads of debris and sneak it into the neighboring bins. One time, he filled my 96-gallon yard waste cart with dirt, and the pickup guys wouldn't touch it. I rolled it over to his driveway and dumped it all in a pile. Neither one of us ever spoke of it again. Our next story is, I got a little girl in trouble on purpose. I have a 1-year-old son, and we decided to go to the playground one day. On this day, a bunch of kids were there, among whom was a bratty 4-year-old or so girl who had a mean streak to her. My son, who didn't know better, went close to her, and she just tells him, "What are you doing here? You're not invited here." I agree. I kinda didn't like my son being bullied, but I figured he didn't understand these things yet, and I didn't want to be one of those sensitive helicopter parents who shield their kids from everything. So I just took my son and we played elsewhere. Later on, I see that her grandma was there, and it seemed like she's not one of those loosey-goosey grandmas. So while the girl was close to her grandma, it dawned on me I could bait her to be mean to my kid in front of Granny. So I placed my son close to her, since I figured out he wouldn't understand anyways, and it worked. She said, "You're not welcome here, go away." And her grandma heard, and she got in trouble, and the grandma said they now will go home since she can't be nice. She fought it, but couldn't do anything. Part of it, I think, Granny just wanted to go home. Edit to add, I'm sorry for the lack of clear communication on my part, but for those who say my 1-year-old needs to learn boundaries, yes, I do agree, and I do try to teach him. For example, he'll want to just grab other kids' toys like toy cars or balls when other kids fling them around, but I never let him touch it and communicate with him why it's important to not touch other people's things without their consent. For the girls asserting her boundaries part, as much as I am for boundaries, she was gathered in the middle of the top of the playground structure where kids access the slides and fiddle with marbles on the walls. So I don't really think she or her group should be asserting their boundaries or personal space when they're in a shared space and a supposed throwaway for other kids. And she was also doing it to other kids, not just mine. Hope this helps. So I think this was just a good life lesson for her. Thing is, I hope that the grandma will stay consistent in that regard, and not just when grandma wants to go home to relax. In the comments, a user named Either Coconut wrote, "You did her a semi-favor. You gave her the opportunity to display some behavior that an adult in her life should be correcting, and fortunately, grandma was up to the task." Our next story is deliberately outstaying my welcome on the beach. Today I, 25-year-old male, was looking for a spot to chill out on the beach and read my book. The heat was real intense, so it wasn't possible to be sat in full sun, and shade was very hard to come by. Eventually, I came across 3, maybe 4 trees evenly spaced out, 2 of which had deck chairs placed under. Now, immediately, I knew these chairs had been placed there by the nearby resort, and so I made the decision not to sit in them, but seeing as they were not on private land but on the public beach, I laid my towel down and sat beside them. An hour or so passed. I had been swimming, reading, and minding my own business when I knocked my bag over into the sand. At this point, I put my bag up on one of the chairs, seeing as in all this time I had remained undisturbed. Sure enough, minutes later, an old man, probably late 60s, comes over grumbling to himself and stares at me angrily pointing to the deck chair. I removed my belongings and found myself apologizing, begrudgingly, given the manner in which I'd been consulted. The man continues to grumble and groan indistinctly as he moves the chair around, and I try to read my book. Just then, his wife, I assume, joins him, and they both begin berating me in thick German/Austrian accents as to how I had the whole beach to choose from and decide to sit here. Now, if I had been asked respectfully, I would have just moved and gone about my day, but given the manner in which I was spoken to, I decided I would stand my ground. Calmly, I told them that they could also choose to sit anywhere along the beach, at which point they became even more animated. I told them I was doing no harm sat on a public beach, at which point the man started to shout at me, "You're crazy, you put your luggage on my chair." I calmly said that I'd been here for an hour and it hadn't been an issue. At which point, they snapped back that they had been here longer. I still don't understand the logic in this. I simply put it to them that I didn't have an issue with the situation and went back to reading, and they both set down their belongings and stormed off into the sea, presumably waiting for me to leave. At this point, I had realized I was all but ready to go off in search of lunch anyway, until this delightful couple gave me the perfect reason to stay just a little longer. For half an hour, I sat with my book, occasionally looking over to them as they swam around, glancing back at me to see if I had gone. Eventually, the man returned. I stayed sat with my head in my book as he moved his chair around me, deliberately hanging it over my head for a length of time. I didn't look up to see what he was trying to gain from this. I did, however, note him deliberately walking across my towel as I was sat on it and doing his absolute best to kick as much sand my way as possible. I said that was real kind of him and that I thought with age, you learn manners. I added that it was embarrassing for a man of his age to behave in such a way. As a result, I sat out for the best part of another half hour, at which point his wife now looked like a dried prune. Having tripled her wrinkles trying to avoid me by staying in the sea, I decided I'd finally move on to get some much-needed food, though not before one final flourish. I slowly gathered my things, making sure I wasn't about to leave anything behind, and with one great swoop, maybe a couple of extras for good measure, flicked all the sand off my towel straight over this great blubbering buffoon. He instantly grew red with rage. I pointed out to him that it was just the same sand he had kicked at me. Sitting upright in his chair, he hastily grabbed a handful of sand and threw it toward me, though he hadn't accounted for the fact that I had taken time to note the direction of the wind. Quite beautifully, it all blew back in his face. I told him to have a nice day before strolling off down the beach and waving to his wife, still shriveling in the water, as I hear shouts of, "Idiot! Idiot!" in the distance. Honestly, made my day. Oh, doesn't OP know they have to respect their elders, and somehow that means when you go to the beach, you gotta give the best seats up to the elders? Look, I myself am not a very outgoing person. If I'm at the beach or something and there's like 4 chairs, and me and my theoretical wife sit at 2 of the 4 chairs, I would be a little disappointed if somebody rolled up and took one of the other chairs, but can you really complain? In the comments, a user named Formidable Mistress wrote, "One of the Backstreet Boys and his wife bought a beach house near where I live. They've been waging a war to try and keep people off the beach behind their property. Here, the laws state that the beach is public and anybody can be on it. They've been harassing people sitting on the beach, minding their own business, have tried to claim the beach as their private property, repeatedly called the cops, and have even brought lawsuits against the county. Each and every time, the cops tell them that no one is on their private property and they have every right to be there. The lawsuits have been dismissed, but I think he's refiled. His wife is known locally for being drunk and belligerent with a, 'Do you know who I am?' attitude. They've basically become laughingstocks to the locals." Another user named Raccoon replied, "You have to go. Tell me why." Our next story is, maybe you should have been nicer when you laid me off. I worked for a company for 6 years that had a lot of members only and public events. Eventually, I was in charge of promoting these events. I installed my own software on my workstation to make my job easier, and so I wouldn't have to create the artwork and flyers from home. The software was Adobe Photoshop, Acrobat, and InDesign before the Creative Cloud subscription was developed. It wasn't cheap, and I never asked to be reimbursed for it because it made my job easy. When my husband had a motorcycle accident and I was about to miss a lot of work, they set up remote access for me. I could still perform my job from the hospital next to my husband's bedside. The company was sold, and for 2 years, my job never changed. Then one day, the general manager and HR came into my office. He informed me that due to a slowdown in business, I was being laid off effective immediately. I said, "Okay, let me grab my stuff and I'll be off." All I wanted was the stupid stuffed animals that were sitting on my monitor that were gifts from members and my husband. The GM said, "No, we'll get them to you later." Really? They forgot to remove me from remote access to my desktop. I logged into my workstation and uninstalled Adobe Photoshop, Acrobat, and InDesign. I didn't touch anything else, All my files were left in place. Then I waited. 2 weeks after I was let go, I received a phone call from the assistant GM. She was taking over my duties and needed to finish the artwork for a project that I was working on, but she had problems opening the files. I asked where my stuff was and when I could get it back. She said, soon. I told her to buy Photoshop, Acrobat, and InDesign, or she could go online and find some open source software and learn how to use it. I received my stuffed animals a few days later. I don't know how they ever finished my artwork. Side note, I ran into the GM while grocery shopping a month after being laid off. I found a new, better job and was happy. After exchanging pleasantries, I hugged him and thanked him for letting me go. Life is funny that way. You know, with how highly I think of Adobe, I'm sure Adobe hears a story like this and goes, "Thumbs up, OP, you're doing the right thing via our licensing agreement. You're absolutely right, OP, that if she wants to use Adobe Photoshop and Acrobat and InDesign, she has to buy her own licensed copy." And then let me save my breath about business licenses and stuff like that. I'm still trying to get over the crazy Adobe prices and the fact that when you sign up for a monthly subscription, they somehow try to pull the wool over your eyes and make it out to be an annual subscription that you can't cancel early, so you'll just have to keep paying monthly or pay like a $100 early cancellation fee. In the comments, a user named Yet Another Brain Fart wrote, I had the same thing. I was the only one who knew how a key system worked and the only one who could code, and code I did. 100,000 lines of it. Then there was the data, lots of extra days from different sources pulled in to keep the system aligned with the business. Nothing happened after I left for a couple of months, but after that, all heck broke loose as everything started to come apart at the seams. Supplier had to come in to rescue them, but as the system was supported by a lot of additional data, wrangling scripts, and some really complex configuration, they could only do so much. So consultants were hired, and they weren't cheap. In the end, they replaced me with a team of 3. Met my old boss at an airport a year later. He was a good guy, told me that I know better, you're lazy sitting at your desk all day, you're fired and I'm adding your salary to my own team, executive, was fired once the board realized the depth of the crap-filled hole she dug for them. According to LinkedIn, she's completely out of the industry and now working as an executive assistant. I guess she found her special place in heck. Our next story is, band teacher told us we were failures, we rickrolled him at the winter concert. Hey guys, I'm new to the subreddit, so sorry if this is the wrong sub. Every year, the students in the honors music classes put on a concert for teachers and parents. This is completely student-led, so no teachers know what the songs are. We have a senior who's basically in charge of everything. She was given permission to approve our songs and make sure it was nothing inappropriate so it could be a true surprise. My band teacher is problematic to say the least. He has a short temper, and I don't think he really wanted to be a teacher, if I'm being honest. He got mad at us in class one day and blew up at us, saying stuff like how we were hopeless and had no talent. Not true, in case you were wondering. So, we got plotting. My friends L and N and I had the idea of rickrolling the audience, so we got composing. Basically, we started off by playing some traditional band piece, then the music stopped, and the tenor sax played the intro to Never Gonna Give You Up, and it went from there. It was epic. The look on the band teacher's face was priceless. That was one concert for the history books. You know, I'm gonna apologize in advance. If anybody knows what I'm talking about, it is hilarious. OP saying the band teacher got mad and started saying stuff like, "You've got no talent," immediately made me think of a vocal stim that's been stuck in my head and I've been joking with my friends about for like the last few weeks. It's that classic viral video of that guy who's like 4'10", who is just absolutely livid and exploding on some trumpet player in an alleyway somewhere. "You got no talent, you're nothing. I walked Bob Dylan on stage, who are you?" I'm not kidding, he sounds legitimately exactly like that. Our next story is, before I quit my job back in August, I forgot I did something petty and nanny'd the workstations. This just got brought up to me via text from one of my old coworkers, and I had completely forgotten about it and thought I would share it. For context, I live in the Midwest. I had a friend at my previous job who worked in IT. He was head of cybersecurity and licenses, while I was project manager for the site and ran the facilities. He and I had to work hand in hand frequently as we had government contracts and had to log in visitors and get them vetted sometimes for a key fob to enter the facility. I would collect vendor information and pass it on to him while he ran things and got permissions. Sometimes I was upgrading on-site systems or installing new equipment for monitoring things like the new solar panels and whatnot. This required me to install new programs to not only my computer, but specific workstations as well. Prior to this current job, I had worked for the government as a contractor, and my top secret clearance was a good selling point for me with this company, as it meant the IT department could work with me on things and use my own contacts I had also established. I was also the IT manager and understood the lingo and nomenclature, so needless to say, my friend and I worked well with each other. Unlike any other IT department I'd worked with or companies I worked for, this job hated IT and treated them like the red-headed stepchild. IT hindered production, and they hated all the rules and procedures that came from them. More like a burden than preventative, the company gave them the lowest minuscule budget I'd ever seen and never took any of what they said seriously. They overworked them and made them come in on weekends or stay late, citing that's why their salary. I sympathized with them and tried my best to help or do the work for them to take things off their plate. New access point needed installed? No problem. I'll use the scissors lift to do it. Need the Ethernet cable ran 100 yards from the roof to the hub? Sure, why not? The trust, my helping, and knowledge led to my friend giving me admin access for me to install or debug programs for him while he was stuck in hours-long training sessions or meetings. The company wisely had certain workstations committed to one computer, and if that crashed or acted up, it shut down production or the line. It was just easier for me to enter in administrator credentials and reboot systems or troubleshoot rather than wait for them to get done by IT. My friend left for another job across the country, and I honestly had forgotten that I had administrator credentials. I hadn't honestly needed them for a while, and I was busy with other things. Because I was in charge of the facilities, I was generally the last one out every single day. The workers had a bad habit of leaving every light on, and the owner of the company would get triggered by it. It was just easier for me to stay 20 minutes after the end of my shift and close up shop after the stragglers or people finishing jobs. My last day wasn't any different than normal, but with one small difference. I heard voices this time while I was closing up. I followed the source, and one of the workstations was left unlocked and blaring on his webpage, Fox News on one page and Newsmax on the other. Employees had been warned about this tons, and the person whose station I was at was a crap person to me. An evil idea came over me, and then I remembered that I had administrator credentials. I went to the web settings and started blocking those sites. Out of curiosity, I went to another workstation and found their browsing history was the same, so I proceeded to do the same thing. I continued to do this at every workstation throughout only one plant. Not only was it foolproof, but the stations were unlocked by the username of the department it was at, but also a blanket work password. The administrator credentials were also a blanket username and password, not tied to anyone. Keycards were only logged in the system for inbound, not outbound. It wasn't unheard of for staff to still be there finishing things up, hence my staying late, so you couldn't pinpoint who done it. The timestamp for admin access might give it away, but there's no cameras on the facility. IT is generally one of the last ones out as well. They could check the logs all they wanted. It was a different team than when my friend was there, and they didn't know I had admin access. Heck, even I forgot I did too. Plus, I was quitting. Good luck proving it wasn't one of you, or admitting that there was a breach in security. I honestly forgot about it until one of the plant managers messaged me out of the blue today. We had a snowstorm last night, and the solar panels were acting up, and they needed to know how to reboot them. I told him how, because I was helping him, not the company. So we started catching up, and I asked how the skeleton shift was working for them. He said fine, but they had been trying to fight a glitch in the matrix for a few months now. The weekend crew was hit with layoffs because of the winter and these tariffs. They're running a crew of 3 on the weekends, and they've been doing okay, but their chief complaint is they can't use certain websites for some reason. Since IT was overworked, and it was just the weekend shift complaining, it was deemed a low priority. But apparently, it's starting to tick more and more people off, and they're now unintentionally throwing themselves under the bus if they're complaining they can't watch Fox News, etc. on shift instead of working. Seems like a win-win to me. I feel like this whole story just feels like a slightly more graduated version of being in the school computer lab and getting upset because you can't pull up cool math games or something. We gotta find some workaround website. Come on, everybody. Does anybody else know any other website where we can still play Max Dirt Bike that isn't blocked? That's pretty much how it went. In the comments, a user named StillNotElf wrote, "You may appreciate this. In grad school, we had networked machines in the lab, and we all knew the root password as we often overburdened them and needed to trim jobs or disk space for each other. When my buddy was writing his dissertation, he would waste time on Slashdot, etc. We would SSH to his machine and edit the hosts file. It acts as local DNS to block his favorite time waster websites, then turn it off when he started asking us if sites were down. We told him about the trick when he finished the dissertation. Real talk, but a homie. I need somebody like that so I can finish my work all the time." But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear some more awesome, crazy revenge stories, why not check out that video on the left of the screen right now? Or if you missed my latest video, you can check that out on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.